everybody, it's Carm here, and coming to you on another rather cold, rainy, dark Thursday afternoon. Before I forget, I want to say a quick hello to my young cousin Zach, if I know watches. So, hey Zach. And he has a YouTube channel himself. He watches and comments on my videos, and I think it's called Gaming 103 Miller, I think. Video Gaming 103 Miller, something like it. Can't quite remember. But yeah, if you're interested, I'll leave a link below if you want to stop by and say hello. He's up there. So yeah, I had the last video for Trish. I hadn't really read the note that she had put in closely until after the video, and hadn't realized until afterwards. The artwork here was done by Jenny B-Sides, so that was really really neat. So yeah, wonderful job, Jenny. Trish's Universe here. I love this too, with the kind of the Saturn ring there around the record there. But, yeah, very cool, and really enjoying. I've spun this one so far. The audio awesomeness. Trish's mixes are really some of the best for doing, activities around the house or driving, or those of you who have them have probably found that, but they're just so enjoyable and so full of variety. So yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with this, and just will get around to the others soon. So yeah, we have 3 more here, and enjoying throughout the week. Starting in James Newton Aksum. It's an ECM from, recorded in 81, came out in 82. So striking artwork here. It's an ancient Ethiopian scroll, Guardian Angel, by Jacques Mercier from 1979. This really beautiful piece here. And James Newton's a flute player, and on here he plays multiple flutes solo. Combination of solo unaccompanied and overdubbing. Mary's there at the time. It plays the standard metal flute, alto, and bass flutes. All the compositions are by him. It's an incredible record, and really easy to get lost in, to where you're not even sure what piece you're on or what he's doing on each piece. Some pieces are completely unaccompanied, and others have overdubbing. And it starts off with almost kind of a choral sound, with the various flutes being blended, all the different ranges. It's an incredible technique on the instrument, making use of overblowing and multiphonics, where you're playing more than one tone at once on a multiphonic instrument. And at times it almost makes the idea of overdubbing maybe a little redundant, but of course the way he does the overdubbing is really fascinating, and there's a great blend here, a great balance between extraordinary technique and a strong sense of narrative in telling a story, and being emotional. There's an ambiguity. It's not dark, but there is a kind of a mysterious quality throughout the playing, but also playfulness. But to have that balance, I think, especially for a solo instrumentalist who's improvising, to be able to tell the story, along with the great technique. It doesn't sound like he's merely showing off, or showing the chops for its own sake. It does have that kind of, you imagine being in a cathedral or some kind of a large cavernous space. At times it does sound like sacred music or something ceremonial, but again, he has that kind of playfulness that keeps it from getting a little too serious or taking itself too seriously. But yeah, just an incredible playing throughout. I have one of his. It's called Echo Canyon, which is on Celestial Harmonies, where he's actually playing outdoors, just out in the canyon, and having the sound reverberating. I haven't listened to that one in a long time. That one's all unaccompanied, of course, live outdoors. this offers another glimpse into his process, his various processes. And not sure what he's been doing lately. I think he's still around, but yeah, if you're not familiar with him, this is as good a place as any to start, and pretty representative of the label. You see on what they were doing with the solo artists at the time. Who just made the albums on their own pretty much. But yeah, wonderful and very evocative. This next one here is a old turn on from brother Chris Cole. Sometime in the last couple of years he had shown and talked about this, and I just found it so intriguing. And of course, it's always worth checking out what he recommends. This is an album called Plains, which the cover is just as as a kind of, again, that mystery and ambiguity that the music conveys it very well. It's done by a couple of fellows, Gregor Curtin on electric organ and synthesizer and electric guitar, and Anselm Rogmans plays voice, tapes, electric organ, synthesizer, and from 1974. It's either November 5th of 74 or May 11th. I think it's May 11th though. If it's I know in other parts of the world they switch the dates around. But yeah, these are the fellows here. Extremely minimal. Starts off with kind of a buzzing, sustained organ line, either organ or synthesizer, that goes pretty much through the duration of the first side. Very gradually altering in timbre and just the sound overall, and everything else kind of builds up very slowly around it. Some more organ and synthesizer comes in. The use of voice is interesting. No actual lyrics. It's more of somewhat of a warbling sound, which kind of continues throughout, just kind of hovering over the mix overall, almost kind of like somewhat of a primal language, but very controlled and really blending seamlessly with the other instruments. Which I think it's him who's singing or vocalizing. And on the second side, it starts off with electric guitar. I don't know if it would be called a hammer-on, but it sounds like he's taking the pick and just kind of tapping against the string. Again, very extremely minimal, as stripped down as you could imagine, and very gradually building into actual lines, guitar lines, but very slow and gradual. And the organ comes in and adds kind of an eerie, kind of counterpoint to what he's doing, and getting slightly more complex, but still very minimal. Hard to really think of other touch points that this resembles, offhand. But it's really, really extraordinary, and it's very powerful for being so minimal and so, so little variety on the surface. But as you listen further, you could hear, little things coming through. You have to really have patience to appreciate this if you like music that unfolds as gradually as possible without, the plot thickens, in the most gradual way and in the most mysterious way. But again, you could hear, even with the previous album, you could hear a certain playfulness. They're not taking it too seriously, but they're just, it's a real patient. You could tell they're being very patient in the actual process of making the music. And it sounds like structured improvisation too. Maybe not notated in the conventional sense, but just allowing the music to unfold from where they started from. And just, it's a really neat, collaboration here. And as far as I can tell, I don't know, I haven't seen anything else under either of their names. So it might have been kind of a one-off thing as far as the recording. Maybe they played with others, but I couldn't find anything else on them. I like this statement up here. I'll remember the landscape of your face, by Patty D. Kind of reminds me of the Chuck Close, the kind of portraiture artist. He said something about that. The face is a landscape of, or a roadmap of a person's life. And, so that kind of brings to mind that. But And maybe you could hear the music in that way too. Kind of a gradual landscape unfolding. But yeah, extraordinary stuff here. Planes by Gregor Curtin and Anselm Rogmans. Self-released, it looks to be. I don't see any label. Yeah, just very plain there. Yeah, looks like the only thing they did as far as I can tell. But yeah, really nice stuff. And this final one here is one that I go back with a very long time, almost to when I started collecting vinyl back in high school. Although I think I got this probably right after high school, probably the summer that I graduated in '94, I'm guessing. It goes pretty far back. Marion Brown, Afternoon of a Georgia Fawn. And one of the earliest ECMs, ECM 1004, recorded on one day in 1970, yeah, August 10th of 1970. So it was, I'm not sure, I don't think this was my introduction to Marion Brown though. I had first heard him on Harold Budd's Pavilion of Dreams. To this day, playing some of the most soul-stirring alto sax or saxophone in general I'd ever heard. Incredibly beautiful. This is, quite different, but it's a different kind of a beauty, an expression of beauty. And also the lineup out here, I'm sure at that time I didn't know most of these players, and really took it for granted what you could say is an all-star lineup on here. Of course you have Marion himself. You also have Anthony Braxton and Chick Corea, Benny Maupin, Andrew Cyril, Jeannie Lee, among others. But so it's two side-long pieces, which at that time to me was still somewhat new, having maybe just gotten a little bit into Tangerine Dream and Klaus. Otherwise I didn't know much about, hadn't encountered a lot of music that had just two long pieces like that. You have the title cut, which is more of a, he describes it as a tone poem. Very subtle, very another one that gradually evolves, both impressionistic and expressionistic, to maybe a couple overused terms, my vocabulary here. But I imagine throughout being in kind of a dark, dense forest, whereas you're getting just little bits of light coming through the treetops, like the little kind of like pinpricks of, or pinpoints of sunlight coming through, and then gradually moving through, and it gets a little brighter when maybe a little less dense. But the sound, the music is really, to me, it really captures that. The percussion is, there's a lot of percussion on here, not so much in the drumming, actual like hand drums, but it's more like sounds like a lot of wood on wood, like wood sticks on blocks, and different materials, and some metallic sounds. Again, I don't like using the word abstract, but it kind of moves into territory that's, the melodies are more hinted at than overtly stated. But throughout, it's a very, really fascinating sense of narrative. Again, when Chick Corea comes in partway through the piece on piano, you get into something a little more recognizable as far as, if you hadn't heard this kind of thing before. But even then his playing, it starts off quite melodic, but then it goes into more, almost like contemporary classical territory. Even maybe a little bit of prepared piano, actually playing the strings themselves, manually. And just getting increasingly dense as the piece goes. There's vocals on here too, like the previous album I showed. For the most part, no lyrics. It's more of a, again, kind of more of like a, like a ready-made language, or a language made up on the spot, just kind of implying where they are, but not really overtly stating. So the first piece is quite, it's more subtle and subdued, and kind of sustains its way throughout, even with the various instrumental changes. Now the second side, Dingy's Corner, is a little more difficult as far as not just the density of the sound, but improvisationally it gets a little more, on the surface it sounds quite chaotic, but it's a fairly controlled chaos, at least the way he describes. in terms of the musicians playing in certain stations, with each instrument having like a primary instrument, secondary instrument, and kind of just moving from place to place. But there's a lot more going on as far as the horns too. We could hear Anthony and Benny Maupin and Marion on the various reed instruments, kind of going at it with more percussion and some bass thrown in, a little closer to what you could call free jazz of the time. But still, that original concept of just kind of gradually unfolding, and it's a little louder, a little more hectic, but if you have that background with free jazz, it might be a little easier to get into. But the first piece, I'd say, is more, it's appropriately on the first side to kind of ease you into the album. But it's a really nice introduction to what he's done overall. Even with the more conventional, things he had done maybe in ensuing years, and even beforehand. But yeah, it's a really very interesting document, and of course what ECM was doing at the time, when the sound was more raw. They were known for making more, kind of refined, reverberant recordings. This is early on when I think they were finding their way, and it was still fascinating. The explorations, which you still do hear to a certain extent to this day. Just different permutations. But yeah, this is great hearing this after it's been a few years since I'd listened to this, and I listened to it a lot back then in the 90s, and almost trying to crack it like some kind of a sacred code. It seemed so mysterious to me, and I was always trying to feel like getting to the heart of it. But I feel after about 25 years, maybe maybe I have in some way. Just with everything else I've been into over the years, it's been illuminating. So yeah, definitely check it out. Marion Brown, Afternoon of a Georgia Fawn, 1970. And I think all three of these should be on online on YouTube to sample. So yeah, see what you think. So yeah, I'm gonna do it for this time around. The BGM. Gary Hughes, Ancient Evenings. It's on Audion from the late 80s, 88, I believe. He has another one called Sacred Cities, which is pretty nice, but for me this is the one to really, just for my own taste, I really go for. Seems to stand the test of time. Various keyboard synthesizers on here, and yeah, enjoyed it for quite a while. So yeah, boys are napping. Fuzzy's right, just off camera here. He's upside down. He's out for the count. Rocky's across the room. He's out. Sorry, Gary, I picked the wrong time for them, but eventually you'll have them both around at some point. So hope you're all doing well, and again, got some warmth and sunshine where you're at. Until the next one, peace, love, and joy.